It's the 19th day of April 2015, and this is the Radical Agnostic. My name is John. With me, as always, my co-host Mark.
Hello.
And our guest today, it's an honor to have her. She's a juvenile court lawyer, a punk rock drummer and singer, and many other things besides. Katie Rogers, welcome to the show.
Hi, John.
Yay! Cue the
me.
applause.
Yay.
No problem. You're actually my first guest that wasn't a personal friend before the show. So thanks to Mark for getting you, asking you to come on here.
And she wasn't my personal friend either.
Yeah.
I don't like Mark.
There's actually
I love him.
There's a lot of hate in this room right now. It was really awkward before we started. But, I'm not afraid that we won't be friends because, to quote Mark Twain, when a man loves cats, I am his friend and comrade without further introduction. And that includes women.
Oh, I love that.
And I could tell from Facebook that you love your cat, right?
I do very much.
Then we're good. So let's talk a little bit about your job because that's really interesting. You're a lawyer in juvenile court.
Yes.
How'd you get into that, or give us a little insight into what that's about?
Well, I started off my career as an attorney working at Legal Aid in the housing department, and basically I was the housing department. I was the only attorney that worked in that department. I did have supervision, but for the most part, it was my responsibility to represent clients in eviction cases. So these are mostly multi-housing unit cases where people are being evicted either for non-payment of rent or violation of the no criminal activity clause that is in most leases in multi-housing units.
And was that here in Tucson?
Yes.
Okay.
And when you say multi-unit, you mean like what we're in right now, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. My experience is that in cities, often apartment complexes are the residence for usually impoverished and working class
I can
people.
attest to that.
So I found, well, in order to get services at Legal Aid, you have to be poverty level. So all of the people I represented were very low income, some of them working, some of them not. And most of them lived in these multi-housing apartment complexes. A lot of the complexes have the crime-free lease addendum. I don't know if you know about that. But
I've heard of it. Not 100% clear on that.
Yeah. I mean, in that lease
in other words,
addendum,
if they break some law, they're out.
Yeah. And that lease addendum, the way it works out is it targets the poor, because you don't see those lease addendums in, nice condominiums or, probably maybe apartments up in the foothills. I don't know, but
Right.
It's really easy to slide that through for these management companies because people are desperate, especially if there's like a special where, your first month free if you pay a certain amount up front and you're like tied into some kind of lease. You're going to sign that crime-free lease addendum very easily because you're desperate. You need a place to live. And if you're desperate and don't have the money for a down payment, you're going to be pretty much amenable to any clause they put in a lease. And that one's a real killer because it's not just like if you commit a crime, like let's say you're not doing anything. Let's say you invite your cousin over and you don't realize that your cousin and his friend were just up at the Circle K and his friend did an armed robbery.
Right.
Your cousin speeds over to your house. The cops are chasing him. The cops come to your apartment and you can get evicted.
And obviously, since you represented people in this situation, you've seen cases like
Absolutely.
that. You're not just,
Yeah.
it's not just hypothetical.
Yeah, I've seen them. I've seen them for sure.
Because I can already hear the conservative sort of response to this, right? Which is going to be just like when liberals say that drug laws are racist laws. Conservatives say, well, what do you mean? And why are you committing crimes? Or like the welfare thing, like how they want to test in Florida. They want to do drug testing to allow you to receive welfare.
Yeah. And
the conservative sort of point is that, well, why are you using your welfare money to buy drugs or something? This should be a clause. You shouldn't be committing crimes if you're on receiving assistance from the city or the state or the federal government.
Yeah. Well, that's true, but the fact is that other people aren't subject to these laws.
Yeah.
I mean, so if you have a crime-free lease addendum, conceivably any landlord could use that, right? Excuse me, hold on. So any landlord could use a crime-free lease addendum in a contract, but you'll find that they're primarily used in these, multi-housing complexes that have low rent and have the rent specials. You don't see rent specials in like condominium developments in the foothills.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
No.
Rent specials exist for a reason, because people that can't afford.
The people in those apartments probably never see their landlord. I mean, they're not.
No.
Landlord's not coming by checking on things. Whereas I've lived in the seedier parts of town for a while, and and you do get landlords peeking and stopping by and trying to see what you're up to. And
it is, and I mean, it definitely makes it possible for them to get rid of tenants that are causing trouble, that are dangerous to other tenants.
Right.
So I'm not saying that it doesn't have a good result oftentimes, but what happens is that people can be evicted who haven't actually done a crime, like the example I gave you. It's not so serious with housing that isn't public housing, but when you get into public housing, like Section 8 housing, apartments where people are renting them using a Section 8 voucher, if you violate the crime-free lease addendum, I'll give another example. Let's say you have a grandma and her granddaughter calls her and says, hey, I want to come over and see you. I haven't seen you in so long. And she comes over with her boyfriend.
Right.
Let's say her boyfriend just did a drug deal or something, or he's wanted. Someone in the apartment complex sees him go in there, they call the management. Grandma gets booted, not just from the apartment, but she gets kicked off public housing.
Yeah.
That's when it gets more serious.
Right.
That's when you're really messing with a person's ability to be housed, period. Not just to go to a different apartment complex because this one sucked.
Right. So it's kind of one of those things where on paper the law seems equitable, but in practice...
It looks benign.
Yeah, it looks benign, and then in practice it falls more heavily on one population. Yeah. And that happens to be the population that can least afford to have the law dropping on their...
And it seems to me in general that the harshest laws, like the laws that can really mess with a person's livelihood, ability to be housed, ability to be clothed, ability to eat, that the laws that have the harshest result seem to, in general, affect those that are poor the most.
Right. Like mandatory minimum sentencing for drug offenses.
If someone is evicted from their apartment and they appeal, they have to pay whatever the court has ordered them to pay, if it be delinquent rent, some type of lease break fee, etc., and pay an appeal fee before they can go on. So in order for them to be able to remain in their home, they would have to pay whatever the court had ordered, which could be like 2 months rent, 3 months rent, who knows, court cost, attorney's fees. And usually the housing complexes, they have these attorneys on retainer. They have firms that just evict people, right? And most of these firms are in Phoenix. So they come down here to evict people all day. They come in with stacks of folders of files, and they just go through them for the entire day, and that's how they make their money. It's pretty disgusting. And I currently am a contract attorney at juvenile court. I've been there for about 2.5 years. I defend parents, either moms or dads, and in some cases children in Department of Child Safety cases. But basically my job is to make sure that the parents' rights are protected and advocated for, that the parents know what their rights are, that they know what's expected of them, and that they always know that they have a right to a trial. It's really good work. It's important work. It's necessary work. But just like the public defender, we have a large caseload. The cases move very quickly through the system.
Now, I have a lot of friends in CPS, and so it's emotionally draining for them. And they start out loving it, and then about 12, 18 months in, they're sort of eyelids are kind of drooping down, and they have bad posture as the soul gets. Does that happen to you?
It's emotionally taxing work, and for the most part, the relationship between the contract attorneys and the AAG and the DCS staff is a good one. I mean, we're on two different sides of the case, but most of us know that we're trying to do good work.
Yeah.
No one has malintent, but I think being a case manager would be so hard. I mean, the pay is awful, and what you have to deal with, you're on the front lines. I mean, you're walking into a family and you're saying, I'm taking your children.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, that's like you're striking at the core of people's humanity.
Yeah.
And people get scared, and people can react in a very volatile, perhaps uncharacteristic way, because you're really hitting them where they live, literally. And it's hard on people.
Well, I was going to ask you, so can you not take a case, or do you, like whenever a case comes up and comes to you, you have to take it, whether, you know what I mean, even if you know that the parent's like guilty and say you have some moral objection or whatever, can you pick and choose what cases you get, or are you?
No, not really. I mean, if you don't want to do a case, you can ask to be relieved, and they'll appoint another attorney, because there's usually always an attorney to take the case. I mean, there's a number of contract attorneys, and usually you'll find an attorney that will be willing. But as far as like being able to say, I don't want to do this case because of ethical reasons, I mean, I guess you could do that, but eventually you're probably going to lose the contract.
Right.
Because I'm sure lots of people would like to do that.
Right.
Yeah.
So even if I think that, maybe a parent did something they're not admitting to, it really is my job to promote what they want. Okay. So, but it's also my job to guide them with my legal experience and my knowledge. So if all of the evidence is pointing to a parent abusing drugs, and they're telling me, I didn't do it, I don't care that the UA is coming back positive for cocaine and meth and oxycodone or whatever, I didn't do it, it's a mistake.
Right.
I'm going to strongly encourage them to do something like plead a no contest to the allegations, especially if there's a criminal investigation open, like if they were dealing drugs or there's some kind of criminal investigation because the kids were involved somehow.
Yeah.
I'm going to encourage them to plead no contest, because having a trial is not in their best interest. There's probably going to be information that comes out, and they may be cross-examined and questioned to such an extent that they maybe admit some things that you don't want out there that just are going to make their situation worse.
Right. It's an ethical, tightrope kind of. But I know that legal representation in these cases is really important. I have a little bit of firsthand experience. When I was in college, I was hanging out in this house, and everyone was like smoking pot and just hanging out, listening to music for several days, like it was the end of the school year or something. And I guess the neighbors or something smelled pot and called the cops. And the cops... they basically busted in. I guess the girl let them in or something, not knowing her rights exactly. Mm-hmm. So they stormed through the house, and they caught this one guy flushing weed down the toilet. Then they found a bowl, a pipe in the purse of this of one of the girls that was there, and so they took her and that guy. They arrested him. And they sort of corralled the rest of us, and eventually they just left and took those two people in. And what the twist is that pipe was mine. I had bought it in Oregon at like a head shop just because I thought it looked cool or whatever. And so I was talking to my friend that night, and I was like, man, I kind of feel bad that girl got arrested with my pipe, even though everyone was using it or whatever. And he was like, dude, you got to do the right thing, man. And he's like, you got to claim responsibility for it. And I wasn't expecting him to say that. No. But after he did, I was like, all right, I guess I do. So I called the police station, told them I wanted to confess to the crime or whatever if they would let her go. So I went down there, and that's what happened. They said they would let her go, and I said, I'll admit to it as long as you don't charge me with the small amounts of marijuana, because there's like ash in the pipe, and that's that's another charge, second charge, paraphernalia and small amounts. Mm-hmm. So he's like, okay, I'll take that off, and it'll just be paraphernalia. And here's me thinking logically that since this thing is available for sale in stores legally, drug paraphernalia, it won't be a drug charge. It's just some kind of little misdemeanor or something. And it was a misdemeanor, but so I went before the judge, and I was just like, whatever. I didn't know what I was doing. I just pled guilty. But
they let the girl off scot.
They let her go. Yeah, she was crying and stuff and everything. So she got away. And then so I got that charge on my record, and that was it. And I thought I had to pay like $250, and I went on my merry way. And then it wasn't until 8-9 years later when I had moved here to Tucson, and I got a job at the hospital at TMC, and I couldn't get a federal fingerprint card because that misdemeanor was on my record. And Arizona requires this stupid card that is just an automated system.
Yeah, I've had to get one.
Yeah. It's just an automated system that says, yes, you can have it, or no, you don't. There's no person going, well, this doesn't look that bad. So I couldn't get it. I lost like 3 different jobs because of that. Terrible. Because of 9, 10, 11 years ago.
Did you appeal it?
No, the only thing it was in Pennsylvania, and the only thing you can do is get a governor's pardon to get that taken off of your record in Pennsylvania.
No, I mean, did you appeal the denial of the fingerprint card here?
Oh, no. I started that process once, but that's also an extremely extensive process.
I've known people that have done it and have finally gotten through to the end and been able to get their fingerprint card for stuff like what you were saying. Yeah,
you have to go up to Phoenix and appear before the court, and you have to get all these letters and everything. And I guess I was just too lazy. I was like, screw it. I'll get another job.
I'll work at Circle K.
Yeah. So legal representation would have been nice.
And that's the thing, is like even if you are guilty, and even if you've done whatever in this country, that's one of your rights, is to be able to be represented legally. You know, and that's what people don't. I don't know. They don't seem to understand in this day and age. Is like with basically trials on TV. Like, as soon as someone gets suspected of something and charged with something, everyone starts trying them in the media, and then it's like someone gets off, and they're like, "How did that person get off?" It's like, well, that's even though you were presented with all this, info or
even though you watch Nancy Grace and you're certain they're guilty,
right? I mean, the people that were on the jury didn't find that, so like you have to,
right? It's kind of like
that's the good thing about our
legal
system, is you aren't automatically guilty.
Well, it was like that Chris Kyle thing. Like, everyone who loved him hated Jesse Ventura for suing Chris Kyle for libel,
right? Because
Chris Kyle said in his book that he punched Jesse Ventura in the face, and for a celebrity to win a libel suit is really hard. You really have to provide a lot of evidence that the person was lying and knew that what they were saying was a lie.
Oh, and it can't be a parody or be for humorous intent or for all this other stuff.
Yeah, and so apparently Jesse Ventura proved to a jury, or at least a judge, I don't know, that never not only did it never happen, but that Chris Kyle knew that it didn't happen and said it anyway, because he won that case.
Well, how could he not know that it didn't happen?
Right.
It's like,
he could be like, well, I was drunk, and I thought my buddies told me it was him.
I punched some weird looking guy.
Yeah. Well, actually, I mean, I think that it's a good thing that Jesse Ventura did that, because, I mean, it sucks, because if you believe everything else about Chris Kyle's story, except he throws in that ridiculous lie, then it makes you question everything else.
It really
and then you
does.
have to go, maybe this wasn't really
That's what
true.
happened. People started questioning his other claims and found out that they were lies too. Like the bizarre claim which I never understood this, but that bizarre claim that during Katrina, he was like working for the Army or the National Guard or whatever, sniping looters in New Orleans.
Oh, he said that?
Yeah, he said that. And of course, it's not true, because if anyone had been sniped by the authorities in New Orleans, we would have heard about it.
Oh, yeah, people would have talked about it for sure.
Yeah, but that's the weird thing, is that he's claiming an act that everyone would hate him for if he did really do it.
Yeah.
But he didn't even really do it.
And why did his brain make that up anyway?
I
Like,
know.
who would think of that?
That's all bizarre stuff, like the Anchorman, Brian
Williams.
Yeah. That
oh, yeah.
came up with all the stories.
I mean, I guess it wasn't all, like, he was in a really hairy situation. And that's the weird thing. He was in a helicopter convoy where one of the other helicopters was shot down, and his received like small arms fire.
Then why didn't he just say that?
know. It's a great enough story as it is. It's something weird about these public figures, man.
Yeah. The thing is, and I mean, I don't know a lot about how DCS operates, but it seems to me, just from being on the end that I'm on, that there's not a lot of consistency as to which, like, kind of what the standards are for removal. So you'll have a case where, you know, a kid gets removed and you'll go, well, that totally makes sense. I understand why they removed that kid. And it will make sense. And then you'll have another case where you saw throughout the history, because you get like a report that tells you like how many DCS calls were made over the course of this family's lifetime or time in Arizona or whatever. And you'll see these cases that you'll say, oh my God, I can't believe they didn't remove them that point. Oh my God, they let them stay after that. Oh my God. And then finally they get removed and you're like, what happened? Yeah. And the only thing you can assume is someone dropped the ball. It was one of those cases that got pushed back, didn't get investigated. And I mean, that happens. I think that's going to happen naturally because you're humans. That's the nature of bureaucracy. And it's a huge, like, just bulging, you know, democracy or bureaucracy that is completely, you know, pretty much only accountable to itself until things get really out of hand.
Right.
And there's just too much for them to be able, there's too much for them to do, for them to be able to do it consistently well.
Right.
And to truly protect all of the children that need to be protected. It's impossible.
And it's the inherent inefficiency of government organizations, but the libertarian would probably have some wacky suggestion at like making it a private company that does this, which would be the most frightening
absurd.
thing.
And how would they make their money? Like, what would be the profit?
In some horrible way, by like grinding the kids up for chicken nuggets or something. You know?
I mean, I think, you know, and I don't know, maybe this is too hippie or whatever, but I think that if you had community organizations that did this, so the communities kind of like police themselves, like, you know, whatever. Let's say you have the community of, let's just like break it up into neighborhoods. Let's go from 36th to 18th, and then from the freeway to Euclid, right? And that area has like little neighborhood centers where people are. It's like a community where people check in with each other. People know if something's going on with a family. There's like kind of like community like responsibility. People feel like they have a responsibility towards their neighbor, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But not just like grassroots hippie, everyone's gonna take care of themselves kind of attitude because we're all brothers and sisters. But you actually have a government agency that is small, right? So you have a small little hub in that community that deals with the people in that community that are maybe investigated for drugs or crimes against kids or neglecting the kids, whatever.
Right.
And the people that work on those cases live in that community. If you did that, I think you'd have a much higher rate of success for cases getting resolved and people getting the help they need to keep their family together. And also you'd have a lot fewer cases falling through the cracks. But I'm sure there'd be all kinds of problems with that as well.
Corruption, you know? Like some of those little communities would be like horrible corrupt where they're all in on some kind of crime ring or something. And but you know, that's one of the things about liberalism is it really does require large government, like a federal government, because people want to say, well, if one of these community governments screwed up or was corrupt, we would be calling for
no, you're right.
this higher level to crack down. And it's one of the hallmarks of liberalism and one of its biggest weaknesses at the same time is that need for big government. Like Peter Joseph, I don't know if you guys ever watched Zeitgeist. I think he's a truther, 9/11 truther. But he's a really smart guy, and he has a series of documentaries where he suggests by the end it's this crazy futuristic city with like concentric circles and stuff, but it's all like this overlord government that provides all of this for everybody.
Yeah, and that's too much.
And that's what I don't understand is, with the left liberal side, whatever you want to call it, if they always believe that there's this like daddy figure, this power that's over everybody else that can crack down to make everything right, instead of the actual people in the community or voters or whatever you want to call them to like weed those people out there.
Right.
Like if you have a problem, let them be able to get rid of that problem.
Well,
and still work within that community.
Well, you see how we in conservatism we have this desire for moral legislation, legislation of morality.
No, they
it's
both
same in liberal, man.
Right.
They
No, it's totally true. It's just a different morality.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I mean, well, okay, that
so you
leads
have
us,
liberals that are like anti-death penalty but pro-choice, and then you have conservatives that are pro-life but pro-death penalty. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it's basically like, I mean, I don't know.
It's like they have like Old Testament values for the death penalty and something else for abortion.
Fetuses.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, except for the one is someone choosing what they're going to do with their own body.
Right.
With
my approach to this, and I've been dipping my foot into seeing how I can avoid the problems of both sides, is to get morality out of government. That's kind of my idea. Whereas like the death penalty, I don't think it should be. I don't think it should be legal, but it's not because the government is legislating the morality of the death penalty. It's because the state. I think some people deserve to die for what they've done.
Yeah.
I just don't think the state has the right to be that instrument, instrument of justice.
But the thing is, if you get,
I'd prefer vigilante justice over the death penalty.
Yeah, no, I
or just put them out on a desert island somewhere.
And it's the same with abortion, though, because the whole point of this show is not like finding the middle ground always, but it's about feeling the other side's perspective. You have to at least feel it once and then go back and form your opinion. And with abortion, like we've talked about it before, I can feel the pro-life people's argument. I understand why that abortion is upsetting to them and why and their objections to it. But the reason I'm pro-choice legally is because, again, the government just has no place legislating that. And so
I'm the same way. I mean, I think that the procedure of abortion, at least the way we do it now, which is absurd because there's a pill that a woman could actually do it herself and no one would have to be involved and it would be totally non-invasive. But the way that it's done now, that you go in and vacuum these baby parts out of a uterus, it's repulsive.
It's
horrific. Who
horrific.
who's going to do that? Who's going to be like, oh, abortion party, woo, this is awesome. It's awful. It's an awful thing. And I can't, there's really no chance, except for maybe rape, that's going to happen to me, that I'm going to just accidentally get pregnant and want to get rid of the fetus. But I can't, it disturbs me to think of doing that. Like, it bothers me to think of it. And I've seen the pictures and all that stuff, and they're freaking horrific.
Yeah.
But the fact is, no matter how horrible it is and how much I don't agree with it, or maybe I would not do it, I mean, who knows? I don't know. Maybe I would, maybe I wouldn't. The state has no right to tell anyone what they can do with their body, which is why I'm pro legalization of all drugs and definitely, pro choice.
Yeah.
I mean,
you can be pro-life in the sense of being against abortion and hoping that it never ever happens, and still be pro-choice rationally. That's not, I guess that's not necessarily what I am, but I could imagine myself being that way anyway. Someone who thinks abortion is one of the worst things a human can do, but still believing that the government has no right legislating against it.
And in doing that, you're keeping your own personal morality out of the picture because it doesn't belong there.
Right.
Not in a free society.
No.
Right. And that's been an argument for a while now about bringing morality into government legislation and stuff. That's what Barry Goldwater in the 60s said, you can't legislate morality.
Right.
But now it's on the other hand. It's a lot of the liberals that want to not legislate morality, but they want to legislate manners.
Yeah,
They
political
want to
correctness.
They want to make people behave the way they want them to behave.
Right.
So let's officially dive into this right now. This is the main topic of the show: feminism, liberalism.
And my thing is words. Okay, words can't upset you. And if someone tells me that, hey, this word that you use, it upsets me, I'm not going to use it around them. I'm going to try not to use it around them.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's a word. And sticks and stones may break my bones. Words are never going to hurt me. I mean, when you react to a word by punching somebody or something like that, I think it shows where the problem lies, and it's with the person reacting and not the person using the word. Because I could call you anything. Like if I hate you, I could call you a book.
Right.
Are you going to take that word away from me? What, where are we going to go? Like
because the meaning is in context.
Right, and it's all like I could call you, as long as the tone is the same, and I'm calling you this because...
It's like when I call my dog, you little stupid head.
Yeah.
You're such a stupid little boy.
Well,
he thinks I'm saying wonderful
exactly.
things.
That's one of the things I love about cats is that you can say horrible shit to them, and you're not traumatizing them at all. Go ahead.
Supposedly, cops, I don't know if this is true or not, but cops call black people Mondays.
Yeah, it's just to have a placeholder.
Everyone hates Mondays, and that is a joke. But supposedly it's not a joke. I've been told that's a real thing.
Well,
so are we going to get rid of the word Mondays?
You made an important point when you said if someone asks me not to say this word or tells me they're offended by it, I won't use it. This is something I've been thinking about with this whole transgender thing. Now, on the feminist or liberal side, what you hear a lot is this declaration that if she says she's a woman, she literally is a woman. To me, you're almost getting too metaphysical with that. You don't need that declaration because there's all kinds of questions about what a woman or a man is biologically and everything. But we don't have to get into it because all we have to say is if this person wants to be called a woman, it's just courtesy and politeness. I'm going to call that person a woman.
Yeah, don't be a dick. Call her a woman.
Don't be a dick. They ask me to call them Jim, I'll call them Jim. Same with their gender or anything else.
But don't create a law saying that if you call that person, if to be a jerk, you say you constantly refer to her as a him.
Right.
That's going to be, you're going to get kicked out of, I don't know, like if there's a university that tells you have to use the word that they choose for you to use, or you're going to get expelled from school.
Right.
That's absurd.
Yeah.
That's absurd.
Okay, so...
Well, and then the same thing with the gay pizza debacle about,
gay pizza.
People wanting to get
Same-sex
pizza for their same-sex marriage. But they won't. The business won't do it because it goes against their beliefs. Blah blah blah. Whatever. There's all kinds of retarded, illogical stuff within that whole argument. But the biggest thing I think is if someone doesn't want to serve you something, like they don't like you and they don't want to serve you, why would you go to that business? Why would you want to go to that business? Well, people spit in people's food all the time. You want to go to a place where possibly that's more of a possibility?
No, but here's the deal. Here's the deal with that, and we have to go back to the '60s, and we have to go back to the Civil Rights Act, and we have to go to how that was translated, and they were able to enforce that act through interstate commerce, through the Commerce Clause. That was a very clever. What legislatures or attorneys figured that one out were very smart, because what they did was this: they said, look. We have the Civil Rights Act, which basically says that it's you cannot discriminate on someone based upon
gender,
the color of their skin.
Sex,
gender came later, and sex came later, and disability came later. But first, it was mainly dealing with color. The 1964 Civil Rights Act. Mm-hmm. So, how do we enforce that? Well, especially in the South, blacks were being refused service anywhere. I mean, they couldn't go to Woolworths. Right. They couldn't go somewhere to eat. Mm-hmm. They couldn't go somewhere to get their car serviced. So they were essentially blocked out of participating in capitalism, right? They were blocked from participating in society.
Right.
They couldn't have their needs met. They could work, but they couldn't spend their money, right? They can't participate in society. So what happened was they found a way to enforce anti-discrimination through the Commerce Clause, saying that if you refuse service to a person of color at a restaurant or a clothing store, then you are interfering with the free flow of commerce from state to state. So certain people will avoid certain states because they can't do business there. And if you do that, you're basically screwing with the country. You're screwing with the Constitution because you're screwing with the free flow of commerce. Therefore, that's how we're going to get you. We're going to say, yeah, you're a private restaurant and you say you have every right to discriminate. No, you can't, because if you do, you're obstructing the free flow of commerce. That's how they made that argument. Now, people will and have made the same argument with regard to this, saying, I won't make you a cake for your gay wedding. Okay. If you have enough businesses that are refusing service to people based upon what they perceive to be that person's sexuality, then once again, the Commerce Clause could be used to say, you know what, there's going to be entire states, there's going to be people that move to a state because they don't do business with gay people, and that's obstructing commerce in the country. So that's how that could be shut down as well. And I don't think that in this day and age that could really happen on such a mass scale.
Yeah.
It probably won't. But it was a very real problem back then.
Right.
That black people could not participate in the economics of society.
And I think you're right. It is realistic to expect that at least some communities, in maybe like Utah or Montana or something, would pop up where it would, if you were gay, it would be hard to
yeah, you
find,
maybe couldn't get a place
yeah,
to live.
Right.
Maybe couldn't get a job. Couldn't go to the grocery store. I mean, they could essentially lock you out of society if they wanted to.
It's tricky because you're by refusing service, you're limiting the rights in a way of a community of people. But by legislating against that, you're supposed, and of course this is the conservative argument, you're limiting the religious freedom or the rights of another group.
Yeah, but if you think about it, the same group, so the gay community could do the same thing, right? The gay community could say, okay, we're going to refuse service to people we perceive to be straight rednecks. Okay,
yeah,
so
Christians
we're going to shut them
yeah.
all up. But the thing is, the majority of the people in this country are heterosexual, and it probably wouldn't work the same way. It wouldn't end up having the same imbalance.
Well, like, yeah, say a Nazi couple wants to get a wedding cake made at a Jewish bakery, and they want a big, huge swastika on it.
Right.
Like, and they go to the bakery and they go, hey, make us this. Like, no, we're not making you that.
Yeah, well, the argument would be that
you're discriminating against me.
Well, the argument would be that they haven't been traditionally oppressed in our society. So it's like saying that a white Aryan couple comes from a history of oppression, therefore should not be discriminated against by a business that's absurd. That's not true.
Okay.
I think part of it is a remedial effect. Like, we need to remedy the harm done in the past. I think that's always part of the argument. So, no, we can't have a bakery that won't make a cake for a black couple or a cake for an interracial couple. We can't have that. But we can have the Jewish bakery say no to the Nazis because the Aryan couple hasn't had a history of oppression by the very group of people that is not making the cake for them. You know what I mean?
It's
I don't know.
Plus,
I mean,
it is a hate group, and the message that they want on their cake is hate. It's a hate message. It's a symbol that describes.
And that group hasn't been oppressed. The Aryan people haven't been oppressed by black people who have told them that. Who have made laws that have made it to where they can't be treated equally in society, that they're imprisoned at a higher rate, all of that kind of stuff.
You never saw that episode of Geraldo where the black guys...
No.
What I'm saying is... but you could make an argument for Aryan couples now being discriminated against just by society in general because it's not thought of as intelligent. You're thought of as like a... stupid redneck.
Yeah, but
and most people, like, there will be fights,
To me, though, you can draw a meaningful line here that makes sense, though. It's that, for example, if you have the gay community is supposedly infringing on the rights of the Christians by forcing them to serve them. But the difference is, so you have both groups claiming that their rights are being infringed upon. The difference is only one group has, as part of its charter, discrimination and or hate against another group. And that's why I'm on the side of the gay community in that one.
Oh, got it.
Because the gay community, there's nothing in the description of being gay that is against Christians or limits the rights of Christians.
No,
intentionally
they just
at least.
Be able to be gay and not killed.
Right, and go somewhere and order a cake.
Yeah.
But the other group, and this is the same with the Nazi
wants to
example,
prevent them from ordering a cake because they hate them.
Part of their
because
charter is discriminatory and prejudiced. Even if you want to argue that they're correct and that Jesus is Lord and gay people are bad, that's fine. You can argue that, but there's a difference in these two groups.
I think there's a difference too, because historically you haven't had people in power that are gay legislating the right to exist of white Christians.
Right.
So you haven't had, and maybe that will happen someday. Maybe it'll flip-flop. I don't know. And I don't want that either. But you haven't had like politicians and legislatures saying, well, we're going to create these laws that are anti-white redneck guy in Mississippi driving a 4x4 and hunting deer because we hate him. So we're going to make it to where it's really hard for him to hunt deer and really hard for him to buy 4x4s and really hard for him to, I don't know, eat wings.
There's no precedent for that.
There isn't.
Well, I'm not going to say that you're wrong, but I will say I think an argument could be made that stuff is happening. And I think in a lot of their minds,
Very
it
good
is
point.
happening.
Very good point.
And that's why they believe
and to me,
what they believe.
This is a sign
Just
that
because they think it's happening doesn't mean it's happening, though.
Well,
but to them it is.
But perception
But here's
is
the thing.
reality to most people.
Well, because they've been dominant for so long that they're freaked out because suddenly they may possibly be being crept up on by the minority. So suddenly they're not dominating everything. They're not seeing people like them on the TV and in the advertisements, so they're freaking out. It's an identity crisis.
It is. Yeah. It's their first taste of losing a little bit slab of power. And to them, but this is the interesting thing, is that within liberalism has kind of become the law of the land, in that groups that are oppressed against usually get the sympathy of the nation as a whole, and then we can legislate to help those groups. You have like Jews and black people and gays and women. But what's interesting is that all the conservative sources, so like the Fox News and the radio, Rush Limbaugh and everything, the way they respond to this is by also claiming to be victims. So you have everyone now is claiming to be a victim because they found that that's the only currency.
That's the way that works.
That's the only currency.
Instead of saying we don't agree that there should be legislation to, quote, protect these groups, we think that everyone should be treated the same from here on out. Instead of making that argument because it doesn't work.
They can't.
They're saying,
because that's not American.
You're discriminating against Christians. You're discriminating against
the war on
white
Christmas.
Straight men.
Remember the war
on
on Christmas on Fox News? All those blonde, Megyn Kelly is up there. We're being discriminated against. White wealthy people are being, and it's the same with the taxing the rich. They say it's class warfare. We're victims. And only in this twilight zone of fucking 2015 America can you get a billionaire credibly claiming to be a victim on television and get half the country to believe him, because all those working class conservatives,
they think they're going to be him someday. Maybe there's a possibility they're going to be that guy.
I think that's part of it.
So they're more on his side than the side of the people that...
I think that is part of it. My other thought on that is that these media sources make it into a moral issue. So they translate their grievance into a working class moral issue.
Yeah.
So like Protestant work ethic or something. They'll translate their grievance, which is usually just a financial one, and to get the support of half the country, they'll turn it into a religious thing.
And then you get people who are self-hating already, possibly, that are maybe poor or working class, and they turn on, whatever, their own kind, or people that are in their same economic class. Yeah. They're the real problem, not the rich guy who's getting tax breaks, up the yin-yang.
There's so few of those people, they're never going to be a strong constituency except for the lobbying power of their dollars. But they need to get those votes from the working class conservatives. And I see it as a nefarious process of getting those votes. Now, it's probably the same thing as going on in liberalism to some extent.
Because they convince, because the Democratic Party convinces the poor and the working class and the middle class that they're the ones who are really on their side.
Right.
Yeah.
That they're the ones who are supporting the social programs and supporting women and
Yep.
supporting people of color and want equal rights. And so you have to go on their side, because otherwise you're just, you're just feeding the enemy.
They make
which
it into
is
a moral issue.
absolutely.
Well, and that's the funniest thing about the gay pizza deal is if Obama and the Democrats wanted to get rid of this whole entire thing, they could just include homosexuals, transvestites, whatever falls under that category that people are opposing to give services to because of what the Bible says, and include them in with race and color
that
and
would
creed.
that would be hard, though. I mean, you would have to. Obama couldn't do that. You would have to
pass Congress.
You would have to have legislatures all coming together from all of the different states, a majority of them asking for an amendment to the Civil Rights Act. That's
Right.
a big deal. That's not something you can just say, we're going to add them. It won't happen like that. The women, I think it's Title 7. I can't remember now,
Title VII,
but
it is.
that's the protection of women,
Yep.
like protection for
And then there's
for women.
there's also the Equal Pay Act.
Yeah, and then the Disability Rights Act. Those all came later, and it was a lot of work to get there. So it's not something you can snap your fingers and do. Yes, I absolutely believe that. I think that homosexuals should be a protected class. If you're going to do protected classes, come on. I think that homosexuals should. I think that transgender people should. But you know what? I also think that the poor should be a protected class. If you're going to do that, if you're going to say, this is a group of people that is statistically and historically kept out of...
Okay, so what you were just saying, Katie, we had a technical problem there, was that...
if we're going to add people to non-discrimination legislation, then I say add, have the poor be a protected class.
Right. Now, I think we would all
Why not?
prefer that none of this had to be legislated. And that's the conservative argument is this isn't a question for, we're talking about protecting gay people as a protected class. They're saying, like Marco Rubio said something yesterday that he thinks it should be up to the states. And that, in other words, it's not a question for judges. It's not a question for the judicial system or the Supreme Court. It should be a state by state. So a lot of conservatives are falling back to the states' rights sort of issue.
But those same conservatives are all about federal legislation when it comes to a woman's body.
Drugs.
When it comes to drugs.
Yeah.
So they flip-flop on that stuff all the time based upon their own personal morality or the morality of their constituents.
They'll dip their toe into libertarianism, but that's about it.
Well,
when it's convenient.
Right, and my whole thought about that, federal versus states' rights, is I think that's a good way to think, but then they don't take it far enough. Like, I think whatever the smaller thing is should take precedence over the bigger. But if you're going to say states' rights should be over federal rights, and then you have to say the individual's rights take precedence over states' rights.
Yeah. No, then
But
it's
then
a slippery
But
slope.
then you start, and I was thinking not as micro as you were thinking, the individual. I was thinking, well, what about the county? What about the city? But when you start doing that, then I think you begin to run the risk of fragmenting the union,
right?
Which is what nearly destroyed this country with the Civil War.
Well,
That's a danger.
Yeah, and even in the beginning, in the late 1700s, they had just the Articles of Confederation, which gave a lot of power to the states. Basically, all the power. There was no standing army. There were very few federal laws. The federal government could make stamps and I don't know, register your horse, but that was about it.
They certainly couldn't make interstates, or there wasn't interstate commerce
No. So they had to. The Constitution was Monroe and Hamilton and these Federalists were saying we need a stronger federal government or we're never going to survive.
Well, I mean, we wouldn't survive attacks. We wouldn't be able to survive to protect ourselves.
No,
really,
there's no army.
Yeah.
You can't. Those militias. Their whole idea was each state will have a militia, and then you'll band them
and who's
together.
to know that one state? Well, like with the Civil War, who's to say that a couple states aren't going to say, you know what, we're going to side with this other country.
Yeah.
Like Arizona and Texas said, we're going to side with the Confederacy, and they're like, what? Who's to say that wouldn't happen?
Right.
So.
All right. So Here's another thing. I might as well just jump to this. Marco Rubio, presidential hopeful Republican. One of the things he admitted recently was that he believes that people are born gay. Gay people are born gay. This whole issue with me, and I'm excited to hear your perspective on it. But mine is that, first of all, I don't like how the gay community feels like they have to react to the sort of prejudiced Christian community who declare that you choose to be gay, which is insane on so many levels, because that means you choose to be straight too, which means those guys who are saying that are admitting that they chose to be straight, and they easily could have just been gay.
It's ridiculous.
And I don't think they would want that image. But
No.
To me, when people say when the gay community or the liberal feminist community reacts to that and say, no, it's not a choice, you're born gay, to me, they're being reactive and they're not thinking that through, because how do you know? How do you know if you're born gay? How does a gay person know that better than I know it? Because I sure don't know.
Didn't they discover the gay gene
no,
a few years ago?
They were looking for that.
They were looking for the gay gene.
I mean, there's probably some, like everything else, there's a partial genetic component, but there's also environmental components. And
how can you know? There's no way you can.
How do you know? It's like, I know that I like vanilla ice cream more than strawberry. Was I born that way, or did something happen that made me like it? I don't know. And when gay people stand up and say, I was born gay, I'm like, how do you know that any better than I know?
Yeah.
Like, what are you privy to secret information? So, what have you thought about that?
Did you read that thing I posted that cleric said?
No.
From Iran, I think. He said that basically, if a woman gets pregnant by her husband and he's fantasizing about another woman, when it happens, the child will be gay.
Oh my God. These guys are...
Oh, that makes a lot of sense. It seems like there'd be a lot more gay people if that were true.
There would be.
I don't know. I've gone back and forth. There have been times where I think I've felt strongly about the argument that, you're born with your sexuality, because it's not. I mean, what person in their right mind is going to choose to be gay? Maybe in this society it's easy comparatively, but I mean, choosing to be gay and, like, I don't know, cobble or something, that would be awful.
Right.
So who's going to choose that in their right mind unless they're seriously mentally ill?
Yeah.
So it makes sense to me that it's something that you feel innately. Now, if you feel it innately, does that mean you were born with it? I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if it means it was biological or not. I mean, it's possible that at a very young age, there were certain environmental factors. Who knows what they were? But I mean, who knows? This is why I think the gay community has been so reactive to usually conservative Christian fundamentalists saying this is something you choose. In other words, you can choose not to be. So you better make the right choice. You're making an immoral choice. Okay. Yeah. I think they're saying, look, this isn't a choice. This isn't you can't say that this is an immoral choice that I'm making because I had no choice in the matter. I have the feelings I have. It came from a place other than my rational choice. So no, it's not a choice. And I think the argument is against the Christians thinking that they can and should change. So you've got the rehabilitation camps, the deprogramming camps that they send these kids to, and it's horrific. I mean, trying to convince them that they're not attracted to Johnny, they're attracted to Jane, and they can't get it out of their head, but eventually they will say, okay, yes, I agree. I'm attracted to the proper sex, so it's a choice. I don't think that it can be proven at all. And at this point in my life, I don't care. It's immaterial to me. Right. But I understand the need to defend it being innate because of the fact that there is this, they apply a morality standard to it and tell you that if you want to be the correct sexuality, you will change your mind.
Yeah, and I think it's just as absurd for the conservatives to say that you choose it. That's totally not true either. Because like I said, that implies that I chose to be straight, which I don't remember. It should just be a non-issue. Yeah, it's silly.
The whole thing should be a non-issue. Yeah. Who someone wants to have sex with or kiss or marry or whatever is a non-issue. And I hate the argument when the conservatives say, well, then go marry your hamster. No. Yeah. It's a different species. Right. Come on now. Right. Like, don't get ridiculous. Or go marry your 6-year-old little brother. What?
Yeah, the slippery slope argument.
And again, that's making it a moral issue.
Although it does bring up questions that I'm not trying to equalize someone who's gay and a child molester. But if you're born gay, and if you're born straight, then are you born attracted to younger children?
That could be true.
I mean,
yeah, and it's actually kind of a weird issue because like there's no public like mental health support or anything for pedophiles, for people who are attracted to children. There's no you can't go get counseling for that or anything. In fact, if you
can.
As far as I know,
as long as it's not you haven't committed the crime, right? So if you talk about the fantasies, or maybe you have committed the crime, but you don't divulge that.
See, I'm not.
There are groups, and there are also groups
that wasn't true. I thought that if you admitted attraction,
you can't get help.
No, you can get you can admit attraction, and you can get therapy.
Okay,
but the therapy is to get you unattracted, right? Or to get you not to act on those fantasies,
right?
And that's the type of therapy they do in the programs for pedophiles that are coming out of prison. They have them in groups of other pedophiles, and they try to basically get them to not act on their fantasies so that when they're released, they won't reoffend.
Which is very odd. I mean,
the reoffending rate is very high in pedophiles because, and I don't know enough about it, but it would make sense that that's innate as well for whatever reason, just like your heterosexuality is innate, okay? But what happens is, as a society, we slap moral labels on it. So in this society, some people see homosexuality, bestiality, and child molestation as all the same thing.
Right.
Because it's not heterosexuality with two adults, right? Two adult humans. So they group it all in together, which I think is stupid, but that's their perspective. I think that heterosexual, homosexual, transgender, non-bio guys and girls, whatever. I think it's all absolutely okay, and it should all be treated the same way because it's consenting adults deciding what they want to do with their bodies.
Right.
I think when you start dealing with individuals who have a lesser capacity to make choices, protect themselves, say no, such as children, animals, then for me, that's where my morality kicks in. And I go, hold on. You're dealing with a being that doesn't have this, it isn't in the same position of power as you,
right,
and can't make the same type of informed decision that you could make. Therefore, it's immoral.
It's interesting because with men, there have been studies on this. With men, the reason that men are more often fetishists and have particular fetishes than women is there is something biological going on there where a male has an imprinting stage. I forget the age. It's like between like 4 and 8 or something, where where environmental factors will have a big impact on what they're attracted to. So if your mom walks around in her bare feet all the time, that can often be a reason for that foot fetish. And it happens with men, but not really with women at all. Women do seem kind of to be consistent in their sexuality from a younger age, more so than men.
Well, that's interesting.
Supposedly men are more sexually attracted with sight, right? Than women. Women don't.
I've heard that. I've heard that too. I don't know if that's itself
that
environmental
that would make sense biologically. My friend and I were talking last night about how just that the nature of sex in animals is very violent. Usually, it's very fast. It's violent. Get her done, right?
Wham bam, thank you.
And we
ma'am.
were talking about how that's necessary because you could be killed 2 minutes later.
You're vulnerable.
Yeah, you're vulnerable. You want. The whole aim is to propagate the species. Not to say the animals don't get pleasure out of it, because clearly, chimps and other animals. It's been shown that they get into it, and there are gay animals, which is a whole other topic.
Yeah, and bonobos, especially, which are our closest genetic primate relative, There are those bonobo apes and chimps. We're equally close to each of those evolutionarily. And chimps are very violent and rapey.
Yeah.
And bonobos are super nice, and
they
everyone
don't do
has
that.
sex with everyone.
Yeah, they're just like, wee.
The only pairs that don't have sex are sons with their mothers. Bonobos. Every
they're
other
moral
pairing.
But we were talking about how in most animals it's violent, it's quick, it's absolutely utilitarian, and that they're not thinking about the feelings or did I hurt you or do you feel objectified or any of that stuff. But humans, I mean, we're not animals, and we are animals, but we're not. We're humans.
We're different,
and we're able to logically and rationally think about things. However, our brains are lording over this body that still has these very animalistic desires and needs that are ancient.
Right.
I mean, we were where, other primates are now for a lot longer than I think we've been evolved. So the fact that that's still a part of us means that we're dealing with those desires, and probably in different humans, depending on the DNA, those desires, that biological drive to like get it done and sex and propagate is probably stronger than others. So you're going to have some, usually male, because they're the ones who got to get it done, right?
Right.
You're going to have men that are more innately aggressive and maybe even violent, and maybe it's not about environment. Maybe it's a less of a, or maybe it's an environment that didn't teach them to be to suppress it enough. I don't know. But to think that you go from the animals that are trying to just, hurry and have sex, and this violent sex that happens a lot of times between animals, like in a rushed manner, and then you've got humans who are very close to these primates, DNA-wise, and you're expecting us to all behave properly all the time.
Well, it's a brilliant
and
way
never
of describing
let that
it.
animal out. It's kind of crazy to think that we all will be able to meet that standard. I'm not saying that, well, that excuses it then. Go ahead and do whatever you want. What I'm saying is I think that sometimes we expect humans to act so differently from where we evolved from,
right,
because we're able to think and rationalize, and we don't have a lot of patience or forgiveness for people acting out in an animalistic way.
And especially women who make up the majority of feminists aren't privy to that male perspective, right? So they a lot of times feminists complain that men don't understand women, which of course is true, but the opposite is true as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to it's not that I want to tell them, hey, we're not rapists, we're good guys, because there is that aggressive instinct in men. I mean, no matter how much we talk about the environmental influences, we are going to come down to some kind of naturalistic origin for some of this aggressive behavior.
But,
it's just
there's a
testosterone.
Right, but there's a difference between like actively having a strong impulse to want to have sex with someone, and even being powerful about it, whatever, and like against their will,
it is
taking,
doing it.
having sex with them.
It's a huge line.
It
is a huge moral line, and the vast majority of men will never cross that line, and they'd be repulsed by the very idea.
Yeah. But it's not to say that men don't have. Okay, so I was thinking about what a friend of mine said years ago. We were talking about the different levels of sexual desire between men and women, and how, I mean, in general, it seems that most women I've talked to, including myself, get kind of more turned on in our heads about stuff, like kind of create these stories, or like there's this scenario that's happening and it's kind of a build up. Whereas men, physically, like you were saying, Mark, they see something, they go, oh my God, bing, and they're on it, right? It happens. It seems to happen much more quickly because the visual is faster, right? Because it's right there in front of you. So if you take, he was telling me that, and this guy is a great guy. I mean, he would never rape a woman. He's very kind. He's very loving. And he said to me, Katie, sometimes when I walk into a cafe and I see a woman that's really attractive, he's like, I feel like I'm like pushing this, kind of pushing this monster down inside of me to just stop, not to rape her, but he's so sexually attracted that he instinctually is like he wants to have sex with this woman
and aggressively, but the object is almost it's pathological in rapists who get off on violating that person's control.
Yeah, and I think that's more about power than being sexually attracted.
Totally different thing.
I want to completely dominate you and make you feel this big and make
pathological.
You know
it's
that I have all the control.
Yeah, right.
And go ahead, Mark.
Well, I was going to say, and so this friend of yours, he has to push this monster down that I from what I'm translating it as, is like he's so desires her that he's going to go bug her and it'll be like, oh, hey, I'm blah, blah, blah. Who are you? You know what I mean? And just, but I mean, like, you know how people meet and, you know, you don't know somebody. So, and in a lot of places, and a lot of women, like, they'll be like, oh, you're sexually harassing me. Mm-hmm. But it always comes down to whether they think the person that's doing it is attractive or not. If you go up and talk to a woman and she finds you at least funny or attractive or whatever, you can say pretty much a lot of different stuff to her.
Right.
And as long as you leave her alone after a certain point, she'll be fine with it. But some guys will go up and say hello and automatically that you're sexually harassing.
So we have some feminists saying that it's sexist to hold the door open for women. We've all heard this, right? Mm-hmm. Now this... we have so much to get into.
By the way, my friend Eric, he's the type of guy that he'll never say a word to that girl, and he will never ever see her again.
Right.
He's not aggressive in that way, but the way he explained it to me made me have a different perspective than I had ever had before on the male sex drive.
Right.
Like, holy crap! So you guys are walking around feeling like you're stimulated all the time at a certain point in your adult life, right? And probably a certain point in your adolescence, where everywhere you go, you're like, I'm going to get an erection. Oh my God,
it builds up.
And he was telling me, he's like, it's so at the surface sometimes that you want to explode. And I thought, I'm so glad I don't have that.
Yeah.
That would be terrible.
It's a thing that a lot of guys have said, and it's funny, but you like masturbate before you make a decision, an important decision. And it's true. Like, I don't want to like get with the feminists here portraying men as these idiotic animals. However, there is some the sex drive takes your brain hostage.
I'm sure.
And
it's a
if you
physical
can get
need
rid of
you have
it,
no
then
control
like
over.
right after though, you're
perfectly
totally
rational. You
I
came,
mean,
you're good.
You're like Spock.
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna figure
and
out.
that happens to me sometimes. I think women are full of it if they say it doesn't happen to them.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen like every day or every other day or several times a day like it may with men.
Yeah.
But I've had points in my life where I'm just like, oh my God, if I don't fucking come, I'm gonna go nuts. Like, I'm gonna lose my mind.
Yep.
I get that.
So look, when they do the surveys on American people, you get about 20 to 30% of Americans considering themselves feminists. Mm-hmm. And this can be between 20 and 40% of women saying that they're feminists. Mm-hmm. Now, when you give them the dictionary definition, which is men and women should be social, political, and economic equals, that skyrockets up to 82%. Which is still weird because there's like 9% that are still against that. But anyway, it's
amongst women too.
A few,
yeah,
not many, but a couple percentages of that are women.
It's called Stockholm syndrome.
82%. Oh, that's interesting. Well, let's get back into it. So when you define it, it goes up to 82. But when you just say feminism, it's very low, and a minority of women call themselves feminists. So in this way, we got something very different from the civil rights movement, right? Because and I think a lot of feminists want to make that analogy. But with black people, you're going to get, well, I couldn't find this actual survey, but how many black people feel like they identify with the civil rights movement? But basically, if you look at voting, you get about 4% of black people vote Republican, and the perception is that the Democrats are for black civil rights. So that, to me, that's a fair estimate, is that you got like 96% of black people identify with the civil rights movement. Mm-hmm. So why do you only have 25% of women identifying with feminism? Then you give them the dictionary definition and that goes up. But to me, that doesn't defend feminism because there's so many other connotations to that word. And they're true because you see things like you get videos online all the time of people saying it's sexist to hold the door open for women. This is what leads the majority of Americans to not call themselves feminists because that idea is very unpalatable to most people, including myself.
Oh, sure. Or Andrea Dworkin saying any sex with a penis is rape.
Right. You get these things. Now, granted, I guess that's an extreme view, but it comes up pretty often in feminist literature.
It comes up a lot because the media represents that as such.
Yeah.
They present that as feminism.
Right.
Instead of representing other aspects of feminism that are probably more the majority, actually.
Right.
In women, amongst women who consider themselves feminist.
Like if every time civil rights came up and they wanted to talk about that, and they presented
the Black Panthers,
not even the Black Panthers, the Nation of Islam guy.
Oh yeah.
If they presented him and had him speak about Louis Farrakhan, most black people I think would be
honestly,
like,
Mark,
no, we're not really for.
You know what though?
rights.
They fucking do that when they put Sharpton and Jesse Jackson on. They purpose. Fox News has 24-hour coverage of Al Sharpton because everyone hates him. Everyone knows he's a fake. And the black people roll their eyes at Sharpton all day long, and they promote him as the voice of the black movement because they know everyone thinks this guy's a dummy.
Right. Yeah.
So, but
is he still on MSNBC?
Did he work for them?
Yeah. Wasn't he?
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. Probably. He makes a lot of money doing what he does.
Jeez.
But all right. So So what I'm getting at is. Feminism is odd because it's not analogous to the civil rights movement in terms of percentages of people that identify with it. So why is it that less than half of women call themselves feminists? And do we have a problem there? Is feminism somehow going astray in that it's not representing women, the majority of women?
Well, I think that... I don't know. I think part of the problem is what was already stated. Like, the more radical voice of feminism is the voice that gets the attention, right? So then people equate that voice with all of feminism. I think that it's similar with racism. You have the voices that cry, that cry out that. Black people are murdered by police and that all police are racist and that, clearly that's the main issue of racism. And then I think you probably have people in the black community that say, well, I don't think it's as cut and dry as you're putting it. I think there are good cops, blah, blah, blah.
We had a guest on, a black guy, who said that. He's like, I've never been racially profiled.
Yeah.
And we kind of found a middle ground there.
So I think you have people that are anti-racist. You probably have blacks that want equality for all blacks who don't agree, that don't agree that, yes, all cops are pigs and they all target, non-whites and, they shouldn't exist. We hate the police. To people that are, pro-equality for blacks who are black saying, no, I don't agree with that. So I think you probably have differences within the anti-racist.
There's no point then in sort of me bringing up all the extreme feminist points, because then I'm doing what you're saying gets done too much. I'm just representing the extreme side. So a more moderate issue in feminism that comes up a lot, the Obama administration took this on as one of their platforms, the pay gap, the gender pay gap. So the statistic that we've all heard, women make 77 cents for every dollar that a man makes. Now, I looked this up. I tried to do as much research as I can, and it is pretty, it's tough to pinpoint the truth on this. What it seemed to be, the conservative reaction to this has been for decades that women choose careers that pay less. They choose more social, people-oriented careers like health, education, and things like that, whereas men are more apt to choose engineering, computer science, executive, finance. So the conservatives say, well, look, and women are also much more likely to work part-time, and that might have something to do with pregnancy and stuff like that. But so the conservatives are saying, look, it's just choice. It's women's choices that are leading to this pay gap. And when you account for those choices, like when you compare never married women with never married men, this gap closes to like 3 or 4%. Now, so there is still a pay gap, which it comes down to discrimination, and any honest conservative will have to admit that. But it seems like this gap is much smaller than it's being portrayed as
argued,
with the
yeah.
7. And so, like with you, I was wondering if this applied to you because I'm guessing that you make less than the average lawyer. Is that true?
I wouldn't know, but
Yeah.
I don't think so.
No?
And
Because
no.
it seemed like...
You mean the average lawyer, meaning comparing myself with male attorneys or comparing myself with attorneys in different areas?
Yeah, different, like all attorneys.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
It's funny because people will say to me, like, I'll be like, oh, I don't have money for that. And they'll say, you're an
You're a
attorney. And I'm
lawyer.
like, you don't understand.
no.
That doesn't mean anything.
It doesn't.
I mean, I make the most money I've ever made in my life, but when I first started working as an attorney, I was making a little more than I made as a non-licensed social worker. And I had been in that field in social services for like 10 years.
But, when you talk about your career, it's very edifying because there's a lot of... You're there in these family disputes. You're helping people. And it seems like this is what they're saying is that women choose these jobs where they have like social interaction and they're making a difference in people's lives, and those jobs pay less. Unfortunately,
I can
like teachers and nurses and stuff too.
I think that probably historically has been true. I think that's becoming less and less the case.
Yeah.
I work with a lot of men. In fact, I think probably there's more male contract attorneys in juvenile court than there are women.
Interesting.
And it's starting to become a little more balanced in social services. I mean, you see a lot of men going into the nursing profession, et cetera. So I think that's starting to change, and I think it's starting to change partially because men are becoming more comfortable with pursuing that part of their character and maybe tapping into a desire to do that kind of work, and before it would have been closed off to them. They would have felt like, oh, I can't do that, like it's sissy or whatever.
So here's the big question, right? The differences that men and women, the difference in the choices that they make for careers and things like that, how much of it is social engineering and, I can't think of the word, but environmental influence, cultural influence, and how much is what we might call natural? So I want to tell you...
I think you can't really answer that question because you can't separate it out, right? So if all things were equal,
right,
and women were encouraged just as much as little boys to follow math and science pursuits and all of that was there.
Spatial toys and
and they
blocks.
weren't given the little dollies, but they were giving these like learning, working tools or toys to stimulate that area of their brain. Then you could maybe say, so there's still fewer women going into math and sciences. So clearly we can say that there's some kind of innate desire for women to be more in the caring professions or whatever. I don't think you can say that. I also think that you have to look at why are the caring professions, why is education, nursing, social work, working as an attorney helping the underprivileged and the disenfranchised, why are those professions valued less than the engineer, the CEO, the the guy working at the Astro Lab or whatever? Why are those valued more, and why are those careers paid less? Period.
Right.
Whether a woman or a man is in it.
That's a great point.
So why
it doesn't
is that?
get raised very often?
It doesn't get raised. And
like
it's
teachers,
because
especially.
As a society, we pick what we value.
Right.
Well, who's picking? Well, I would posit that white, wealthy men are picking which careers should get paid. Which careers should get paid certain amounts of money. What is valuable? An engineer is more valuable than a teacher. That's a value that we have as a society.
It's interesting. It's a tough question. You'd have to talk to an economist, I guess.
Although if you talk to little kids, girls generally pick, I think, a better paying job than boys. Maybe not anymore, but in the past, because usually boys want to be like a cowboy or a fireman, and girls want to be princesses.
Right.
So if you're a princess, you got way more money.
No skill.
But
it's
you have
hard
way
to
more
do
money.
anything.
I sent
But you
in an
have way more
application.
money.
I sent in my application
And
to
that's-
become a princess,
I mean,
and I
that's
was
kind of
not
a joke.
accepted.
You were denied.
Right.
I was not
I'm
allowed
sorry.
to be princess.
That's an area where the sexism really gets
Discriminate-
reversed.
it's reversed.
There. Yeah, it's reverse sexism.
I want to tell a kind of a little story here because in preparation for this show, I started thinking about chess. The best people in the world at chess and other games too, like poker and all these things, and why it's always men winning at the top of these fields in these games. They're not physical, you know. And I'll tell you right now, when I started researching this and asking this question, I came from a sexist sort of perspective. I wanted to find that it was an innate ability of men that was superior to women, because it did seem like that was going to be the case when you look at the numbers and you get something like poker, and any woman can play poker. There's no cultural conditioning against that. But why does no woman ever win the World Series of poker? So I started researching this, and so like the top 100 grandmasters of chess in the world are there's one woman in that top 100 ranking. Actually, it's kind of interesting. She's a Polish woman, and she at one time ranked like number 7, which means she's one of the greatest players of all time. So she was actually incredibly good. But so I was, my question is, why is this? Why are these games and all of these fields dominated by men? Well, there was an interesting study done that showed 96% of that weighted the advantage towards men in that was attributable to participation rate. So all it was that a reason there's 99 men and 1 woman in the top 100 grandmasters in chess is it boils completely down to how many women play chess. Right. And there's so few that 1 out of 100 is exactly what you would expect statistically.
Oh, wow.
So there was really no innate superiority in men in chess. There was like that 4% that maybe, but that could be a sampling error or whatever.
Or it could be real.
It could be. So,
and then what does that mean?
So I was surprised by that, and it's not what I wanted to find. I wanted to find that I was part of the superior race or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question, but that doesn't really answer the question. So the question then gets pushed down to this: why do so few women play chess compared to men? And it's the same question I just asked you, which is how much of this is attributable to cultural influence and how much is innate? And we don't know the answer to this.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how. I don't know if boys, at whatever age you start normally playing games like chess, I don't know if boys are more encouraged to do so. I don't know if it's like a common game that men or that young boys play, and that maybe their fathers encourage them to do it. I know that. Well, this is my story about chess. So I grew up in a single parent household. My dad split when I was 11. My mom worked 2 jobs and went to college to become an English teacher, traditionally female occupation, and was raising my sister and I. And she brought a chessboard home one day and taught us how to play chess. I don't know how she learned. I mean, she came from the South and from foster homes and girls' homes. So I don't know how she ever learned chess. I don't know if she learned it back then. I've never asked her, but she brought the chessboard home one day. I think I was about 12 years old. My sister was 8 or 9, and we learned how to play chess, and we loved it. Yeah. And I even made a chessboard in wood shop when I was in high school, and I still have it. So that seems a little odd, because you would think of chess as being more of a higher socioeconomic class of game that a kid would learn. I don't know. But then you see old black men, they'll have on TV. I don't know why you always see this in the park playing chess. I don't know why that's such a common scene in TV shows and movies.
They're out there.
But yeah.
And no,
so
there
I don't
are
know.
I
don't know culturally what what types of families or whatever encourage chess, and if it's more boys that are encouraged than girls. I have no idea.
I'm sure that is a huge factor, and that if you encourage everyone equally, more women would play chess. I have no doubt about that. But I don't think it would even out to 50-50, because why would it? Why would we expect men and women's pursuits to be exactly the same?
I don't think you can. This is the problem, I think. The problem is, okay, so when you talk about equal treatment, you're basically saying, for me, that means, and I'm sure it means different things to people, but for me, having things be equal for people means that they're given the same opportunity, right? So
Right.
if I
Level playing field.
if I'm a little girl and I am interested in math, all the resources and attention and time are going to be put into me as much as if I was a boy. Like, I'm going to get the same attention, time, and encouragement, right? Then I can make a true choice. Do I want to major in engineering when I go to college, or do I want to major in social work? I can make a true choice. Mm-hmm. Until and if I'm given that level playing field, you cannot tell me that a woman is more inclined to become an English teacher as opposed to an astronaut. You can't tell me that. But here's the issue that I think is often missed. That the problem with looking at a woman's work and maybe gender wise a woman's desire to move more towards what we consider to be the caring fields, the nurturing fields, mm-hmm. and men being more inclined to mechanical, science, math type fields, is there's nothing wrong with either of them. Okay, there's nothing wrong with the nurturing types of fields. There's nothing wrong with the technical types of fields. The problem comes when we start to value one over the other. So maybe, and most likely so, most likely so, women are more generally inclined to working in the particular areas that we've spoken of, and men are possibly more generally inclined to work in the areas we've spoken of. The problem comes in is when you value one over the other.
Right.
So women won't be concerned about being equal if the work they do is considered equal. They won't be concerned with, well, I'm just as into math as you are. No, I'm actually not, but I'm going to say I am because it's the only way that you're going to think that I'm on your level.
Right. And that reveals an interesting struggle of what it is to be a woman in this society, which is important for me to keep reminding myself about. But the reaction to that is going to be, look, like with doctors, when you have female and male doctors will tend to become specialists, like surgeons or cancer doctors. What's that called? Oncologists. Mm-hmm. And women will tend to be general practitioners or pediatricians. Mm-hmm. So you got to pay the surgeon more than the GP, right? I mean, there's a reason for that. It's not just discrimination.
Mm-hmm.
It's this guy went to like 5 more years of school.
Absolutely.
And so that's what the reaction to what you're saying is that we value engineers more because they have to go to like 5 more years of school than to be an English teacher or whatever.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. The problem is, though, that if you have... The only problem with that is if women are not equally encouraged to pursue those fields and they aren't given the same resources, same time, same attention that a little boy is with regard to that area, engineering, or becoming specialized in something, then there's a problem. If they flat out just say, I want to work with little kids, then you're going to get paid less and deal with it.
Right.
Because men that say I'm going to work with little kids are going to get paid the same.
Right.
Except for I think that the reason that happens and certain things are valued more than others is because we value boys differently than we value girls. And I think we value girls more, or at least try to protect them more, because we value women for propagating the species. We value women for creating more citizens. We value boys to be able to fight and protect the citizens.
Right.
And so that's why women, I mean, whatever pursuit of employment they go down, they're really valued more for how many kids they can pump out.
Yeah, and taking care of the kids so that they don't die or become crazy.
Yeah, completely. And
that job is totally undervalued.
And creating a healthy system here in our country. Whereas boys are more replaceable. I mean, we'll send them off to die.
Right.
And then, as long as they're replaced here.
Well, there are a lot of crazy statistics about that.
Now that's changing because of our social circumstances and what people are wanting to do and women wanting to join the army and, military forces and everything. But like in the past, like reading and writing in China and Japan and the royal courts, it was the women that knew how to read and write. Men didn't.
Well, in this country, men are overwhelmingly more likely to go to prison. Men are overwhelmingly more likely to commit violence and be the victim of violence. Boys are also this weird thing. Men die 5 years earlier than women. We kind of just take that for granted, but that's fucked up, and they don't know why that is. There's a lot of theories, but no one really knows why men die 5 years. Women live into their 80s on average. Men are dead by 74 in this country, and that's weird. And here's the thing.
Well, I think that's a whole value of life.
Yeah.
Like I think men are usually in more dangerous jobs,
right,
or in dangerous situations, or don't take care of themselves.
Yeah.
They don't take care of them. They're supposed to be smoking and drinking.
Right.
Blah, blah,
I
blah,
think about the men in my dad's side of the family. They were all electricians. I mean, hard laborers, like out there doing back-breaking work every day. All of them have died pretty young.
Yeah.
One of them from emphysema, my dad from alcoholism, but also his body, I think, was really broken down from the type of work he did.
I'm sure.
That type of manual physical labor shortens one's lifespan. I mean, it just does. So that absolutely makes sense.
And so there's something wrong with the way men and boys are treated. Now, I don't want to just shift from the way women are treated. Like I said, the point of the show is feeling the opposing side.
Yeah.
And if I consider feminism the opposing side to me, I will say I've felt it when I saw my sister grow up and other girls and my girlfriend, her stories and everything. What women go through growing up in this country is pretty horrific. And this culture is poisonous to women. And on all these eating disorders, like everyone should be just so disgusted by that and do anything they can to stop that kind of indoctrination from happening to women that want to cut themselves and hurt themselves. Like, to me, it's just horribly poisonous. I guess the mass media and the culture and our values and what they've done to women. And so I feel that, I really do.
And most men that I know, and I'm friends with a lot of men, feel the same way you do. They're disgusted by that. It's not okay with them.
No.
They aren't on board with it. They don't ignore it. They notice it.
Yeah.
So,
and on the other hand, you have this problem with boys and men in this country. And like I said, all these statistics are going to prison. They're dying earlier. And here's the thing with the rape and the sexual assault. Of course, men are doing it far more than women. Men are getting it done to them by other men more than women too.
Yes.
But what you have, so there's a huge correlation between corporal punishment and violence and criminal behavior later in life. And the fact is that boys get hit more than girls. And in fact, 94% of American children, boy or girl, gets hit to some extent. That's insane. And if you go to the murderer's wing of the maximum security prison, you'll get statistics saying like 100% of them were severely beaten. So there's a huge connection here, causal link. And boys get hit more than girls do statistically. And they're getting hit by their mothers more than by their fathers. Mothers hit the children more than fathers do, probably because they're around more, but also because mothers don't know how to deal with the boys, maybe.
Or there's more single parent families that are just women, not.
So that's you got to consider that too. But so boys are getting beaten by women, and it's got to be something to do with why they're growing up to be a higher percentage of rapists.
Oh, I think it has to.
Yeah.
I think it has to have something to do with. I mean, you're physically beaten by the person who's supposed to be taking care of you.
Right, and it's a woman.
It's your
it's
a physical
connection
threat.
is being made there.
No, I can totally see.
I think feminists. I feel their point. I just think they have to start taking things like that more into account instead of this saying teach men not to rape, which to me is the most dubious concept I've ever heard. When do we say, do black people commit more crime than white people? Do we say teach black people not to steal?
Commit crimes, not to steal things?
That's not how we deal with social problems.
No, that's a good point.
Well, a big problem too, I think, with rape today is our definition of it. and we've, and I'm not trying to poo-poo anything away. If you actually got raped, I feel for you, and I'm completely sorry, and it's a horrific thing. But now, like, okay, if you go on a date and you get drunk, and I'm not talking about the guy put something in your drink
and date rapes you in that way. Yeah,
I'm saying you both went out, had a fun time, got drunk, slept with a guy, which you wake up the next morning and you're embarrassed. You wouldn't have done it normally, or you don't really find the guy attractive, or whatever. And now you say, "Hey, I couldn't give consent. I was drunk." It's like, well, what about him? What if, like, you both go out and he would feel the same way and be like, "Oh my God, I don't want anyone to know."
Yeah, and
Could
this
he
is
say
the
that?
affirmative
But
consent.
how can you know that that's a reason that a certain percentage of women are saying rape? That it's because they slept with a guy they really wouldn't want to tell their friends
Because
about.
obviously,
how would you know that?
that's going to be the vast minority.
What I do
right,
know
Mark?
is, what I'm saying is, I think the statistics for rape, for women being raped, have gone up.
They have gone up.
And I think a big part of it is our definition of rape, what we consider rape today.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is the universities on campus and stuff. And
affirmative consent laws.
Yeah, and in a lot of places, it's still not to the percentage of actual rape, probably. You know what I mean? Like a lot of rapes don't
get reported.
are underreported. Yeah. Rapes pretty much are underreported.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
and it's it's embarrassing by the rape victim to come out and say anything, and it's even doubly embarrassing for a guy to come out and say he got raped.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think that I think men are definitely discouraged from ever, letting anyone know if they were in fact raped. We were talking last night about that ridiculous movie with Adam Sandler and Andy Samberg, where Adam Sandler is his dad, and it's a comedy. I didn't watch the thing because I think I watched the first few minutes of it or something, and I realized the premise, like, oh my God, holy shit, I can't believe they're doing this, and it's funny. They're saying it's funny, but it's so what, this like 13-year-old kid was seduced by his teacher in school, and he got her pregnant, and the result was Andy Samberg, the little boy.
Okay. That's weird.
And it was, it's funny, the guy was like, the kid who ended up growing up to be Adam Sandler in the movie was like, yeah, and I thought, oh my God, there's no way we would do that with a 12-year-old girl being seduced by her math teacher, and it would be a comedy.
Yeah.
Like, there's just no way.
Well, that's just society, too. Like, you see all the semi-attractive teachers that are sleeping with boys, and then people are like, oh, I don't see what the problem is. Or,
I don't see what the problem is. It's
like
ridiculous.
Like the one lady, Letourneau, she actually ended up marrying.
They got married
kid.
and they have a family,
kids and stuff. And at the same time, it's like that's pretty screwed up.
What you're bringing up is that things like the affirmative consent law are going to result in more false or specious accusations of rape. The response to that is just that from the feminists is, look, it's like vaccines, right? Like 1 in 60,000 vaccines are going to kill a kid. But we still do it. We still do it because it saves way more lives. So the idea behind the affirmative consent is, look, if we're preventing some rapes, or if we're solving some rape cases and prosecuting more rapists as a result of this law, we're just gonna have to deal with the fact that some more men are going to be falsely accused.
Except for sex, as we've discussed, is a very weird, nebulous, not at all completely clearly thought out deal.
Yeah, so where do you stand on that, Katie? Affirmative consent, because it probably will.
Because affirmative consent is like, okay, can I touch your boob?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, thank you. Can I touch here now? I mean, who does that?
Which a lot of
when
women
you're like
do.
making out on the couch.
No one does.
And
that.
if you did, it would end the sexual experience for a lot of women.
It would be a total turnoff. I think, for both parties involved. I haven't thought about this a whole lot, to be honest with you.
It's a tough one.
But I can say that I think, and I'm not saying that I don't think these laws should exist or that we shouldn't focus on the more nuanced versions of sex. I mean, there are people who don't think that two women can have actual sex because it's not actual sex, because it's not a penis and a vagina.
Right.
So they're saying, oh, it's just oral sex. No, that's sex. That's sex to me. But, there are other people who are like, that's not sex. So I think that I think that you do need to maybe be more broad with your definition of what sex is so that you can look at then what is a sexual assault. However, I think that it's maybe equally, maybe more important, I'm not sure. I need to read more on the subject, to make sure that people know that that rape is something that will be taken seriously, is something that won't be that the accusation will not be turned around and used against them as a victim,
right?
And that it will be pursued with the same type of vigor and attention to detail and desire to get this thing taken care of as any other type of violent assault.
Yeah.
So, for example, if I'm assaulted on the bus and someone beats the crap out of me, and everyone sees it, the police are gonna go after that person, right? Mm-hmm. They're gonna be screwed. That person's gonna get it. But if I walk off the bus and I tell someone later, the guy on the back of the bus totally like tried to rape me and fondled me, and I didn't say anything because he told me he was going to slit my throat because he knew where I lived, mm-hmm. and I go and tell the police, they're going to be like, really? I mean, you were on the bus. Like, didn't you think to tell him? So the whole thing about the victim being questioned and being doubted and the perpetrator kind of being set aside, like, well, maybe, maybe she let him on or whatever. That's the problem with the crime of sexual assault, is that it's not taken seriously across the board, whereas other types of assault are taken seriously across the board. Now, here's another problem. I think there are far more men who are sexually assaulted than report it. Right. It's not taken seriously. Women are not, on a crusade to make sure that boys and men are having their voices heard and being able to feel comfortable about reporting rape. So they're not taking the rape of young men and boys, or the sexual assault of young men and boys. They're not putting it on the same level with the sexual assault of women, because it's statistically not as prevalent. Men are the ones making the laws, whatever. But the fact is that it happens, and it's just as not okay as what is happening to women.
Same like
that
with
is a
hitting
problem.
The kids,
Yeah, that's a problem. The abuse of young boys, I see the results of that in the work I do. Yeah. It's disgusting. And I think that part of the problem is our society thinks that boys can take it, right? Smack them around a little bit. It'll toughen them up,
It just makes them more violent.
No, it's abuse. It's abuse. And we have to look at, as a society, what are we doing to encourage this violence? Not clamp down on the violence, punish the violence.
Teach
what are we doing
to
to encourage
it?
Not just, teach you not to rape, but teach you that you're valued in this society for who you are, and that you're not going to be that any type of physical aggression towards you is not going to be minimized because you're male.
Right.
It's not okay. It's like I saw a video, I don't know, it was maybe like a year ago, and you probably saw it, Mark, and maybe you did too, where they saw these people were standing around, and it was like a hidden camera of this girl beating up her boyfriend, hitting him. And people were laughing, and people were just walking by. That's unacceptable. How can we take ourselves seriously and say that we're up in arms about, seeing such a violent act happen to a woman and how despicable it is, but we as a society will find it funny when a woman smacks a man.
Right.
I mean, I remember when I was probably 18 or 19 years old, I was in a relationship with a guy. He was the sweetest, most loving guy. I mean, he was great, and he was so gentle and caring with me and good, and I was a bitch. There was a lot of emotional stuff I was going through. I didn't treat him right. I was emotionally abusive. I used him. I would break up with him and then get back together with him when another girl was interested. I was awful. Yeah. And one night he was trying to get me to stay and talk to him. I was upset. I wanted to get away. He was holding my arms and saying, please just talk to me. And I start punching him and hitting him. And he just took it. It never occurred to me at that point in my life that I had just abused someone, that I was a domestic violence perpetrator. Now as an adult, I was a domestic violence perpetrator.
That's
and
powerful.
If he would have lashed out at me, if he would have hit me back, he would have gone to jail.
Yeah, that's a very powerful
and I made amends
story.
to him about that later on. We're friends now, so.
I invited the head of the Gender Studies Department, Dr. Monica Casper, here for the show, but I haven't heard back from her yet. In preparation, I was reading one of the articles she wrote, and it was about the Ray Rice incident, the football player who knocked his girlfriend or wife out, punched her, just...
Yeah, it was terrible.
It was terrible. But a lot of people are looking at the fact that she hit him twice before that. So she slapped him in the face twice. And so where do we lie with this? Because Dr. Casper was saying that Janae Rice, Ray Rice's wife, eventually apologized publicly for hitting him. And Dr. Casper said this apology was totally unnecessary and that it was like a victim blaming type of thing.
What was her reasoning?
They were arguing. She said she was mad at him.
What was the head of the gender studies department's reasoning that it was victim blaming? She shouldn't have apologized.
All she said was that she didn't get into why. She just said this is a shame that the society pressured Janae Rice into apologizing, and that apology was unnecessary. She didn't
back up.
I'm not going to
explain why it was unnecessary.
That wasn't my opinion of it. Is okay. So she slapped the guy twice.
Right.
I mean, how much bigger is he than her?
A lot.
Was he fearing for his life?
No.
It's the same thing with like cops and and how they overreact.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Your wife slapped you twice. Yes, that might not be cool. She might owe you an apology. But how did you react to that?
Right.
You went way out of bounds.
Yeah, you knocked her the fuck out.
Yeah, she knows this open hand. She knows this can't hurt you.
Right.
She knows this can't damage you.
So that's why I can
And he knows that he could kill her with that.
That's why I can kind of see if people are using that as his defense. Well, she slapped him first.
Right.
That's a little bit kind of victim blaming.
I think you're right. Yeah.
It's definitely not a defense. That's not a reasonable defense in my mind. Is it okay that she hit him? No, it's not. And it's not okay that we assume that men can take physical violence.
Right.
No,
men can take it, and they should take it. I mean, I see.
But this is where the men's rights activists jump in and do exactly what I described before. Is they claim to be victims. So the men's rights activists, their whole thing is
but
no,
they're
we're the
victims
victims.
of feminists. They're
Right.
victims of women.
Yes.
They're not victims of other men.
Right.
Which is
it's
interesting.
just like it's the war on Christmas all over again.
Yeah,
it's now the
because
guys
who's
in charge.
Power. It's not like women are running the country,
especially,
so they're victimizing you guys.
Especially when you talk about physical violence.
Yeah,
that's where the men win 99% of the time, unless you're fighting Ronda Rousey.
Yeah,
right.
But yeah, it's annoying, and that's why I don't run with those guys at all.
I think the men's rights activists are really doing a disservice to men who are trying to bring attention to the ills that they suffer in this society.
Yeah.
And the way the society fucks with them. I think the men's rights activists make it laughable. So it's not something people can seriously discuss without treading over into the water of being a men's rights activist.
It's like you say, they blame women for it, which is to me is the same mistake that some feminists make when they blame men for all the rape and everything. And by showing these statistics about boys that get hit and everything, my whole point is that it's a social problem. It's a cultural problem.
It's a social
It's not
ill.
us versus them.
But also,
and the men's rights activists do the same fucking thing.
The
They
thing
go,
is
it's women hurting us. No, dude, you're fine.
The thing is that most people, if you talk to most people, I bet, and I can't say because I can't talk to everyone, but if you got an opinion poll from most people in this country, I believe most men and most women would agree that socially we have a problem with violence, that as a society we use physical violence and glorify it and use it and in a way that is completely out of whack, and that we need to address that ill, and that most men and women believe that people should be treated equally and people should be given equal opportunity, and men shouldn't be beat up and women shouldn't be beat up, and little boys shouldn't be hit and little girls shouldn't be hit, and rape shouldn't happen to either. I think most people probably have a balanced, rational view of the thing. But when you get into political taking a political side on these issues, and you get voices of people on the fringe saying, well, men are victims of women, and men that maybe feel disenfranchised or feel like they don't have a lot of purpose and they're not real clear who they are, and maybe they've been dissed by too many women, run over to that side. And then you have women that have maybe had some bad experiences with men, run over to the fringe side of feminism. Then you have this idea in regular people's minds that men are like this and women are like this. So if you say that you want to look at how men are treated poorly in this society and how society, fucks with little boys, then you're a men's rights activist. If you want to talk about how women are disenfranchised and women are objectified and they're, they're victims of sexual assault more than men, and therefore you're a feminist, you're over on the fringe end of feminism. You're not in the middle. I think most
Whereas
people
all three
are
of
in
us
the middle.
agree with all of the positions of both of those sides.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
what I hope is the function of a show like this.
Although I do think there are, again, problems with words and definitions. Like, I don't know, I'd have to look this up, but I've been told that rape, as a definition, includes a penis. If a penis is not included,
I've heard
it
that.
cannot be rape.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Well, what about penis-shaped objects
Yeah.
or sticks?
Sodomy
or
with
your
a-
like
fist?
I said, I'd have to look it up.
No, I've
but
heard
been
that, yeah.
told that more than a number of times, that so like
I don't know. It's just tricky, though.
so
'Cause-
by definition, legally, a woman cannot rape someone.
Right.
They could sexually molest someone,
Yeah.
but not
Right.
rape.
Right.
You know what I was thinking about, and I don't know if we have time to get into this, but I was thinking about this earlier. Like, what have there been studies done that sexual assault is more psychologically damaging to a just plain old physical assault? So you beat the hell out of someone, they're near death, they're in the hospital for 6 months. Is that as psychologically damaging or less than someone who gets raped, maybe man or woman raped, child or boy or girl molested? What are the psychological effects of that, and why do we think that a sexual assault is more egregious than someone beating the hell out of someone?
Yeah, that's a great question, and
Or even emotional abuse. Someone
Yeah.
just calling you names your whole entire life.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
saying you're stupid and,
I know. I know. Yeah, I read a recent story by a writer, and he's like a minority. He's from India or Pakistan or something. Sorry that I don't know, but he got his ass kicked like twice by street thugs, and he was messed up. He was talking about how he couldn't. There's a lot of meek men, especially too, that if you beat them up like that, or women, of course.
Yeah, you've damaged them for life.
Yeah, that they don't get over it.
Especially in this society that values men being tough and they can take a hit. And
a lot of them can. And yeah, like you said, if you see a woman beating on her boyfriend, that guy might be really meek and just get terribly scared and curl up in a ball when someone hits him, regardless of his physical strength or not.
Yep.
All right, that's it. We went super long, but it was worth it. Katie, thank you so much
awesome.
for your
Thank
input.
Thank you so much, John and
I was
Mark. It was
really
great.
excited about the show, and
Yeah.
it came totally to fruition.
Yeah.
And we might have to make it like 2 parts, or I
that'd
might
be
have to
cool.
spend a couple days editing it or something. But thank you so much for coming.
Right.
I don't know who we're having next week, but as always, it's going to be awesome. Mark, thank you for coming again. And guys, listen to New Music Sound Circus on the Radio Dogs Network on SoundCloud. 10 new songs every Sunday. My buddy Bo puts them together. Slick editing and really cool songs from a number of different genres. So check it out, guys. And I don't know, do something with this Facebook page that I have, Radical Agnostic. Click it, write on it. I don't know how it works. Share it, please. All right, guys, thanks.